From the mysteries of the universe to the mysteries of the unknown, this is Mysterious Realms with Mr. Cyber. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Here is your host, Mr. Cyber.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Elijah, aka Mr. Cyber, and welcome to another episode of Mysterious Realms. Tonight I have an honor of speaking with Lester Velez, who is a graduate of the University of Vermont with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration. Beginning in September of 1970, he served in the U.S. Army as a field artillery officer and was later vice president of Luscombe Engineering, which is a Silicon Valley-based manufacturer's representative company. He joined MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, in 1991, and he has held the following positions: field investigator, training coordinator for field investigators, the assistant state director in Northern California, chairman of the A.E.R.C, which is the Abduction Experiencer Research Committee, and team leader of A.R.T, which is the Abduction Response Team. Also during that time, he became a facilitator for an abduction support group in San Jose, California, and in 1994 he co-founded OPUS, which is the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a great topic which we all love, which is aliens and UFOs and the unknown. So without further ado, it's my honor to have Lester Velez with us today. Well, hello, Les. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Elijah. Thank you very much.
Hey, not a problem at all. So I was going through all your background, and I tell you what, this specific topic is very fascinating, and it's actually one of my favorite topics to discuss out of everything out there. And it's UFOs, aliens, and phenomenons. Going to you, I just want to go back to the beginning. Where did this all start for you and your whole mission, and how you got involved in this field?
Yeah, well, we have to really back up in time. Goes back to the late 50s, and I was 11 years old at the time, and I was living in Connecticut, and I was coming in the house after feeding my dog, and it was already, dusk, and I saw this object hovering over a tree line, and it was not making any sound. It was oval and, in design, kind of whitish, silverish, and it was just slowly moving, in a easterly direction from where I was living at the time. And it scared the hell out of me. And I ran in the house and I tried to get my father to come on out. And eventually he did come out, and it was, of course, gone by that time. And so he said, well, it's probably just a beacon of light reflecting off a cloud or something like that, and of course I didn't believe it. And I decided to go to the library soon thereafter, and I started to look for books on UFOs. And at the time, George Adamski was the prominent author in the UFO field, and talking about his experiences with the Venusians. And so I really got hooked. And but it was, I got to be an adolescent, and girls became a little bit more important in my life instead of UFOs, and I kind of forgot about the whole thing.
I can understand what you're talking about in that age range.
Right. So anyway, I eventually went off to college and got into the military soon thereafter. And eventually in 1985, I had the opportunity after working at Procter and Gamble for a while, and another company that made analog and digital panel meters, to go out to California and buy into a manufacturer's rep company selling passive electromechanical products like power supplies and LCDs and switches, and they were selling to people like Apple and Cisco and companies like that in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved out to San Jose, and one day I picked up the San Jose Mercury News, as it was called back then, and Stanton Friedman was coming to San Jose City College to talk about UFOs and the government cover-up, and it was like somebody threw a switch, and I said, "Oh my God, I got to go see this guy."
Yeah.
And so I did. I went, and I expected to see a handful of people there, but the auditorium was packed. He gave one of his inimitable presentations. I was really blown away by the whole thing. And on my way out afterwards, there was a table manned by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And they were talking about the journal that they publish on a monthly basis. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go and get that journal. And I did. And that was fine for a while. But then it was like something in me said, I got to get more involved. And so they have a field investigator course. And so I took that and passed. And next thing I know, I'm working with people that not only have seen UFOs, observation-wise, but then they were telling me that they had contact with these non-human intelligences. And that kind of blew my mind, because I was kind of a nuts and bolts kind of a guy.
Yeah.
And more interested in understanding how these craft operate, and the ramifications of understanding how they operate that would really change the world. And but then this whole secondary thing started to come up in a significant way, that these people were having these contacts, and they were quite significant, in some cases quite traumatic. And so these people would ask me, do I know of other people having similar experiences? And I said, yes, I do. And the next thing I know, I'm facilitating a support group in my office in San Jose.
Oh my gosh. So that all, so essentially down in San Jose, just going and seeing that MUFON table essentially reopened the door for you into this field.
Yeah.
To get your interest spun back up.
Absolutely. It was like, the switch was shut off for a while, and then all of a sudden it was turned back on. And this is something that I talk about in my book, The Unknown Other and the Existential Proposition of Alien Contact, which is on Amazon. But as I said, I was very much a nuts and bolts kind of a guy, but then working with these people and understanding that the trauma that they were having with regard to these experiences were quite significant and moving. I felt very compelled to try to help in some way, shape, or form. So that's why I eventually set up the support group. And then having done that, to listen to these stories were just remarkable. I mean, these people, were not able to talk to family members. They weren't able to talk to, fellow workers. They were not able to talk to clergy. They were afraid that if they did divulge these experiences that they were having, that people would think them crazy. In a lot of cases, these people had already gone to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they found out that they weren't crazy.
Yeah, they're absolutely normal.
Yeah, exactly. And so then what? What's the next step for these people? If they can't talk to other people, their family members or clergy or coworkers, so it's really puts them in a very difficult position, and a quite stressful position, because some people are able to handle it And there's a lot of people that can't handle it.
Correct.
And it causes great problems, either with regard to relationships, in many cases where spouses are not very understanding, and causes splits in a family.
Yeah.
And also, it causes not only physical issues but also psychological issues, and so it's multi headed problem that occurs when these things happen. And PTSD is another factor that goes on with these people. So there's something going on. And, the big question is, is it extraterrestrial in nature? Is it interdimensional in nature? Is it time travelers? Is it our military? Or is it all of the above, which I firmly believe it is, and probably anything you can possibly think of with regard to this phenomena, because this is something that we don't fully understand. It is going on, and these people do not have a psychopathology. In 2007, I had reached out to the international director of MUFON, and it was James Carrion at the time, and I told him that they were missing the boat on working with these people that claim that they've had contact with these non-human intelligences, and because they were basically a nuts and bolts type of an organization, and so thankfully he saw the light, and so what was happening at that time, after my nonprofit was already established, and I'll go back and tell you about how that happened. But all the phone calls that were coming into MUFON were being redirected to me. And so I was doing triage on these people to understand what it is that they needed and what they were looking for. And then subsequently, MUFON asked me to put together a group of people to do an analysis on these abductees or experiencers. And what we did is I got a hold of a couple of psychologists, and we did a study called the Omega-3 study, where we took 71 people that were claimed that they had contact with non-human intelligences, and then 51 people as a control group. And the findings on that were quite interesting. In general, the abductees and experiencers profile differently than do their comparison counterparts on a number of general psychological and specific neurological variables. Yet there are remarkable similarities between the experiential group and the comparison group. It should be noted that in no case did experiencers or comparison group participants show any signs of mental illness or personality disorder, so they weren't crazy, okay? Fantasy proneness does not appear to play a differentiating role between the experiential and the control groups. However, sensitivity to alternative realities and early and reoccurring paranormal and side experiences seem to play a role in the abduction experience. And a lot of debunkers talk about the fact that, oh yeah, these people are fantasy prone. And then he also mentioned things like sleep paralysis. Well, they're having sleep paralysis when this is going on. But 2/3 of all the cases, whether in a bedroom or not, did not involve sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's mentioned quite often is false memory syndrome. And false memory syndrome, the American Psychological Association, nor any other mainstream psychological diagnostic system has either ratified or proven such a diagnosis. So, I think Clancy, the gal from Harvard, wrote a book about that. And she posited the fact that this is all false memory syndrome. Well, it's a bunch of baloney. Childhood conflict, psychosocial tension and abuse, and trauma more likely facilitate a dissociative coping style in later life. And this dissociative coping style, again, is not a psychopathology in any way, shape, or form, but it seems to open them up. And how much a part dissociation plays in the abduction experience remains an open question. Both experience with and interest in the abduction phenomena have impact on how one's body is perceived to function, how one views the world, and one's purpose in it. in how one defines or redefines one's faith, tradition, and beliefs. In essence, both experience with and interest in contact seem to change one's sense of self and one's worldview. And one of the things that happens almost without fail is that these people come back after these experiences and talk about the fact that we need to be better shepherds of the planet, to be more concerned with what we're doing to the planet. We need to be better to one another. We need to be more caring, more loving. These are all very positive things that come back from these people, both experience with. Let's see. Okay, let's skip that one. The abduction experiencers believe that there is a sentient, purposive alien intelligence at play in their lives and at work in the world. With the intelligence's goals seem to be more beneficent than benevolent, more benign than malignant. And there seems to be right now more people leaning towards the positive with regard to these experiences as opposed to the negative. There's been a couple of other surveys done which posited the fact that somewhere between 70 and 80% of the people that are having these experiences feel that they were very positive. The initial stages of these experiences are always traumatic. But then, depending upon how many more of these people have, they tend to come to accept it. And then in the later stages, when it stops, it's almost like the Stockholm syndrome, where they wonder why it stopped.
Yeah.
So these are very interesting things. And
so now I just have one thing for you. So going back, and correct my pronunciation if I'm wrong. It's called OPUS, correct? You're the
that's right.
Chairman of the board and one of the co-founders of this organization. So it essentially sounds like you all provide a lot of different support and try to get to an understanding with these individuals that have gone through these experiences. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. That's correct. Yeah. Well, what happened was this goes back to the early 90s. And I got a call from headquarters, MUFON headquarters, that a newspaper man was looking to chat with somebody about UFOs and things. So this reporter from the Monterey Coast Weekly came out to interview me, and took some pictures, things of that nature. And afterwards, after the article was printed, a woman called me from Carmel, and she said that I saw your article. I'm very interested in what you're doing, and I like to understand what's going on with my brain when I'm in contact with these off-earthly entities. And I said to myself, how could I possibly help this person? And then she said she was working with an emergency room doctor down at Carmel. And so I called a friend of mine who happened to be a doctor, and he was very interested in connecting with other doctors. And the doctor that I contacted actually turned out to be a co-founder with me, Dr. Eugene Lipson, who unfortunately passed away a number of years ago. But anyway, I told him, I said, look, why don't we go down there and meet this woman, and let's just, and there's another doctor there, and I'm sure, you guys can communicate with one another, and let's see what we can do. So we did. One Saturday afternoon, we went down there, and as we got into her home, there was a picture on the wall, and it was her standing on the back of a rather large vessel, and beautiful crystal clear blue waters, and it seemed like it must have been the Caribbean or something like that. And I said, so what's this all about? What are you doing there? And she said, well, I'm helping these treasure hunters. And I said, really? How are you doing that? And she said, well, I was in contact with the captain of the galleon that had gone down.
Interesting.
So that started the afternoon off with a bang, so to speak. And come to find out that she had a near-death experience, after which she became very psychic. And she started to, get in contact with these other entities on a fairly regular basis. So we came away that afternoon saying, how can we possibly help people like that? And that's when OPUS, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, was hatched. And in 1994, we officially became a 501c3 nonprofit organization recognized by the IRS. And so it's been quite a journey. We're going to be, celebrating 30 years in business. And the bottom line is that, our mission, simply put, is to help people having paranormal experiences. And that paranormal covers a lot of ground, a tremendous amount of ground, other realities that most people don't even get involved with. But as it turned out, most of the cases that we've been involved with have been with regard to people having contact with these non-human intelligences, as opposed to poltergeist activities or demons or things of that nature. And there's so much to this that is just absolutely remarkable, and the way that we've come to find out has proved very helpful is the online confidential support group, where we have almost 400 people from around the world that are communicating, on a 24/7 basis with one another, telling their stories, asking the questions, and it's been super helpful to these people to understand that they're not alone, that there's other people having very similar experiences like theirs. And so, then the second thing that we set up is that a referral network of mental health practitioners, hypnotherapists, psychotherapists that are vetted by us. And this has also proved to be very beneficial for these people, because a lot of them, after we talk to them and find out what they're really looking for, and we do that through our EST group, which is our Experiencer Support Team, which is a triage team of people that are very knowledgeable in these types of phenomena. And but these people are, looking for, in a lot of cases, a hypnotherapist to unlock some buried remembrances. And but we also tell them that, hey, look, you may not want to hear what the real story is. So you got to be very sure that you want to do that, because once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's hard to put it back in.
Yeah, no, that's most definitely true. And one thing I want to go to is AERC. What is that acronym?
The Abduction Experiencer Research Team.
Now,
and that was,
what is their mission exactly?
Well, it's no longer in existence, number one.
Okay.
That was something that I got started with MUFON years ago, to address this phenomena of people having contact with non-human intelligences. And out of that, eventually came the MUFON A.E.R.T, which is the Experiencer Resource Team, which, MUFON now does have that capability to help experiencers as well. And they also have a referral network of people, and we actually work together. And we exchange, if we come up with a provider, we'll share that with them, and vice versa. Because this is the thing that is so important. This is a worldwide phenomena.
Oh, indeed.
This is not just a United States phenomena. And, there's many organizations out there that are probably doing very similar things. And unfortunately, there's a lot of egos involved with a lot of these things, unfortunately. And so people are not willing to share, or they're not willing to work with one another. But we've managed to do that with MUFON, and so that's a real plus. That's a real plus. And but the ERC was, out of that came that omega-3 study, basically, because I had lined up all these people to participate and put eventually the report out there. And that's on our website. People can go to our website at opusnetwork.org and go into the article and document section, and you'll see the omega-3 study in its entirety. So you can get a lot of interesting information out of it. A lot of statistics. So if you're a statistic nut, then this is for you.
Well, I know a lot of people would be fascinated in this. And to go back, that's on your website, opusnetwork.org, yeah. OPUS right. network.org. These topics with alien abductions, alien contact, they're so interesting. Because each story, and I don't know if you've noticed this, because I've spoken with quite a few individuals, and while each one is different, they all match up. If you read between the lines, they all have so many similar characteristics that it's undeniable that these events actually happened. And when you're not just getting a little percentage, you know, this is a worldwide thing that's happening. And what's crazy, and I'm sure you can agree with me on this, there's a lot of people that have not come out about experiences that they've had because they don't want to be frowned upon, they don't want to be laughed at, and they usually keep it to themselves. And they need an outlet or someone to turn to validate what they went through. And I'm pretty sure you can agree on that. Like, we're just probably, the people that have come out about this may be like 1% of everybody that's had these type of encounters or experiences.
Well, you bring to mind my latest theory on all of this. Back in 1992, the Roper organization put out that report that was funded by Bigelow and David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins had requested. And at that time, they said that there was like 6 million people in the United States alone that had some kind of contact. And fast forward to today, and the fact that it's a worldwide phenomena, I believe that everyone, including you and me, have had an experience, whether we consciously remember it or not. And I'll tell you a story. One of the support group meetings I had in San Jose, one day a person said to me, "I've seen you before." I said, "Oh, really? Where? At a UFO conference?" I said, "No." He said, No. I saw you on board the craft."
What?
I said, "Oh, really?" So I kind of blew it off. And it was like a year and a half later that somebody, totally different person, said, "Hey, I've seen you before." And I said,
Wow.
"Where? UFO conference?" No. You were sitting on this bench naked on board the craft and you were freaking out, and they told me to go over to you to calm you down. Well, at that point, I decided, well, I'm going to go get regressed, and I'm going to find out if I can find out anything along those lines. Well, I had 3 separate regressions and did not find out anything along those lines. However, had multiple past lives. And then in conversation with someone later on, after those regressions, they said, "You know what? It's really possible that maybe you didn't have an abduction or contact in this particular lifetime, but in a previous lifetime."
Yeah.
And that this person somehow tapped into that. And I tell you, time suppression, compression, missing time, all this kind of stuff is just mind-boggling. And there's so many facets to it that once you start going down this rabbit hole, anything is possible. Just like with Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, it's Alice in Wonderland is kind of a good analogy because Yeah, it can be confusing, and you start questioning yourself, but at the same time, you understand, no, this really did happen. It's kind of like that. It's it,
Hmm.
it's hard to find a word for it, but yeah, the Alice in Wonderland analogy is actually a good analogy. It's like, what?
it's it's very surreal. It's very surreal, and you know this reality that we are in at the moment, but there's so many other realities that I think coexist
Oh,
along with us,
definitely.
whether call them interdimensional, uh, you know, uh, and that seems to be a real popular thing with string theory, certainly, and that there's so many dimensions beyond our dimension, and so why isn't it possible for these dimensions to merge at times? Because you have these abilities to supposedly take people through walls, through ceilings, through windows.
Yeah.
I had a case. I had a case that I worked on. This is years ago as well, uh, where this gentleman contacted me and uh, started to relate this story when he was younger. I think he was like 5 or 6 years old. Um, where he was abducted, and this was near Wright Patterson Air Force Base. And
You know what? I don't mean to cut you off here. I actually grew up in Dayton, Ohio, at
oh,
near Wright Patterson Air
uh-huh,
Force Base, and oh wow, trust me, I know all the
yeah,
backstories on that, like Area C, the whole Roswell alien thing. Oh yeah, that is real. That is.
and so this story is amazing because uh, he was taken and taken through a window, but he was holding onto his blanket, and the blanket got stuck in the window. And supposedly the military came in the next day and took the window out.
Wow.
And yeah, and the story goes even further that they were taken by the military. He and his mother were taken to the base, and after this abduction had occurred, and they were brought into this room, and an alien was brought in on a gurney, and the alien was alive and supposedly touched both of them, so that the purpose of that touching was to make them forget this whole incident. Okay. And supposedly somebody had come into the room that shouldn't have been there and was hustled out of the room. And according to this gentleman, there were shots that rang out. And that particular person was listed as missing in the newspaper the next day. Well, we tried to find that article in the paper, and all that particular time frame were all gone. You couldn't find a copy of that paper anywhere.
It was completely removed.
It was completely removed.
Wow.
So
So with this whole Wright Pat ordeal, I just wanted to bring something up. What's fascinating is my uncle, who unfortunately passed away in 2009. He worked out at Wright Pat at Area C, and I tried to get answers out of him, but of course, he couldn't reveal a lot of things. He was working on a lot of secret projects out there. And a lot of people just think Groom Lake Area 51 is like the main place where it happens. Well, that's actually not true. But he did tell me, he did say one thing when I asked him, is everything out there true that you hear about the aliens in Roswell? And he just had one phrase, and that was, what do you think? And the way he said it really was intriguing because he essentially wanted me to read between the lines. And he didn't answer that question, but he answered it in a way to be like, duh. So it's...
yeah.
So just
Yeah, I mean, these people have signed documents that say that, if you divulge anything, that your pensions will be uh, taken back,
oh
and
yeah.
a whole bunch of negative stuff that could possibly happen to you, and so and that's been why a lot of these people have not come forward over the years. Although it seems like the Congress just recently passed a resolution that would make it easier for people to come forward. However, if they're still involved with a secret program, they can't come forward. They still can't come forward. But what they can do is, if they've seen things on their own that doesn't involve a program that they're involved with, they can come forward. So it's kind of interesting how that situation is.
No, you're absolutely right. It is really interesting, and it's you essentially sign NDAs and you essentially sign your life away. I remember because I was in the military. I was in the Air Force, stationed down at Travis Air Force Base, down between Sacramento and San Francisco. And
Right.
man, I wish I knew a lot about this, but I had a lot of friends who were high level officers, colonels, even 1-star generals that I became friends with when I got out of the military, and they kind of answered me the same way my uncle did. It's like that "what do you think" kind of question. But now here's one for you that I'm always interested in. What are the psychological and physiological characteristics of alien contact? Is there a difference, and what are those characteristics?
Well, you have the as far as physical effects are concerned, people talk about missing or compressed time, audible tones that either they're hearing before an abduction, or a total silence, that an abnormal silence, and a feeling of presence that comes about. Nosebleeds, people talk about. Unusual marks on the body, puncture marks, triangular marks, dots, surgery marks that heal abnormally fast, scoop marks on the body, implants, unusual stains that people have on their bodies, paralysis, reoccurring headaches, eye and vision issues.
Yeah.
The ability to move through solid, like through windows in solid matter, being taken up in a beam of light, lying on an exam table and being probed, missing fetuses, out of body experiences, poltergeist activity, orbs. Of course, the missing fetuses, are something that years ago I got involved with a gentleman who's since passed away. Can't remember his name. He was a doctor, and we went down to the archives in Washington, and we did some research down there. And he came back with the fact that he didn't believe that these women were actually having their fetuses taken, but on the contrary, I firmly believe that that's something that is going on with these women, because there's many cases where there's an ultrasound done, the fetus is there, and then the next thing, the fetus is not there, and there's no visible signs of that fetus being ejected from the woman. It just disappears.
Yeah.
So also telepathic and psychic abilities, metal taste in the mouth, feeling of heat and sometimes sunburn. So, I mean, there's so many different physical aspects of the phenomena. And then in my book, I talk about many of those aspects. There was a physicist by the name of Jim McCampbell, who was in San Mateo. And I worked with him, and I talk about his book that he wrote about this phenomena. And he goes into a very scientific analysis of the phenomena as far as the effects of these things that are occurring with people. And much of it is related to electromagnetic effects and
Yeah.
X-rays and gamma rays and all kinds of things of that nature and microwaves that affect people in a very significant way, and in a lot of cases in a very detrimental way. And so, you get the opportunity to get close to a UFO, don't.
Stay away from it.
Yep, just don't get close to it. Exactly. And then, of course, there's psychological effects. Anxiety, fear of specific locations, flashbacks, sleep disturbances, phobias, depression, confusion, PTSD, inappropriate reactions that individual is experienced, like Whitley Strieber's book Communion. When a lot of people saw that book that Whitley put out there with that alien on it, it freaked them out, and it brought back memories that they needed to resolve.
Oh, indeed.
So,
Wow. So, another thing, what do you think we're dealing with regarding the alien phenomenon? Do you think, so a big question I always had is, are a lot of these, so there's aliens and then demonic sources, if that kind of makes sense. A lot of these sightings that people see, that they kind of have like a 50-50 take on it. They think some of these it's like a spiritual demonic thing, and then the other 50% believe that, yeah, there are really aliens out there. And of course, I think maybe a fraction of those might be some military aircraft that are beyond like our imagination that we already have now. What's your input on that? Do you have anything regarding that?
I think, what we need to do is understand what we have here on this plane, first of all. And we have good people, and we have bad people. And I believe the same thing is going on up there, wherever up there is, whether it's extraterrestrial in nature, whether it's interdimensional in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Is it our time traveler friends, or is it the military? And I think we have, two major factions, and this goes back to, eons. This goes back eons, where you have, writings and pictograms and things of that nature that show creatures that don't look like you and I.
Correct.
That are in some cases are good spirits, if you will, and some of them bad spirits. It's a mixed bag. You can't say it's one thing or another. I mean, it's like, the Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs school is they're all bad.
Yeah.
And then the Stephen Greer's school of thought is the fact that they're all good. Well, I think it's totally a mixed bag. We have good ones and we have bad ones, and those bad ones may be called demons, and the good ones may be called angels. It's just a matter of perspective. What's your upbringing? How you were brought up, in life, and what you experienced. Did you have a religious background or a non-religious background? And so it all flavors that experience in a significant way. And so I think it's just basically a very mixed bag. You have, as I mentioned earlier, that a vast majority of the people claim that they don't want these experiences to stop, because they've gone through the initial phases of it, which were quite traumatic, but then they became to a place where they felt okay with it, very comfortable with it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when it stops, it's like the Stockholm syndrome, where people feel that, oh my God, why did it stop? Don't they love me anymore?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. No, it's very complicated. It's very complicated. I don't think you can say one way or the other, that it's definitively X or it's definitively Y. It's a combination of X and Y.
Yeah. So when it comes to these aliens, what is your take on hybrids? And what are they specifically?
Yeah, well, the hybrid situation is very interesting to me, because one of the women that was part of our support group in San Jose, Helen Luttrell, wrote a book called Rachel's Eyes. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a book about her daughter going to college with a hybrid. And it's an absolutely fascinating story. And this hybrid that she was her roommate, was quite different. Wore clothing that was quite concealing. And in fact, the military would bring her meals to eat because she couldn't eat regular food.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And there supposedly is a base in Nevada, not Area 51.
Yeah.
Like 90 miles southeast of or southwest of Ely, Nevada, where they keep a lot of hybrids, and a lot of these are entities that have been retrieved from crashes that they're trying to integrate into society. So it gets to be a really complicated story. You got to get that book. It's called Rachel's Eyes, and it's not a quick read. It's almost 400 pages. It's one of the people that did the hypnosis session on Helen is one of our board members, June Steiner.
Oh, interesting.
And so,
interesting.
Yeah, and yeah, so there's a big connection there. And she has more stories to tell, but she was basically promised that she wouldn't tell anything until after she passed, and so supposedly has another manuscript that she's written. And so I'm in contact with her. The last time I contacted her was probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, but and she's getting up in age now, and so I want to touch base with her again and see if I can somehow get that out of her.
That's interesting.
That she knows more about. But this is real, folks. This is happening. This is not made up. I mean, and now with the government, finally realizing that they need to look at the UAP phenomena, the next logical step is that they need to be talking with and working with people that are in contact with these entities. And the bottom line on this, I just did an interview, and I have an interview series on my website called the OPUS interview series, and I just interviewed John Ramirez, who's an ex-CIA guy, and he basically told me that the government is fully aware of all of this, and the government, meaning Congress, they're all read in to what's going on, and they've just been keeping a lid on all of this for years and years and years. And but now that the egg has been cracked a little bit here, I think that they're going to be able to start working with these experiencers in a more open way. But they already have. I mean, I know for a fact that like Lou Elizondo, I had lunch with him a couple of years ago before COVID shut everything down, and he was talking about the fact that they understand how these craft operate, and so if he knows that, then of course everybody knows that within the government.
Yeah.
And,
well, you know what?
What's
fascinating is one of the individuals I interviewed the other day, or a couple weeks ago, who, it's anonymously. I don't know, like I mentioned earlier, if it was a male or a female, who it was. They cloaked the voice, that it came through as unknown. But they were talking about a lot of similarities that you are, and everything's adding up. Going back to the point, there's 2 points. If you watch the news or you watch movies, it's like the government is slowly trickling out this information.
Yeah,
so
it's the drip method.
Exactly.
The drip method.
So once it's eventually revealed, everyone will be like, well, we already knew that, duh. Because if they did it all at once, they don't want to shock the system. and that makes sense. And the other thing is, when it comes to these alien craft and technologies, a lot of these items have been, well, not a lot yet, but quite a few technologies that we use nowadays were reverse engineered from these craft and then introduced into society, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, well, yeah, Colonel Corso was, in his book, The Day After Roswell, talks about that, in quite some detail. And I had the opportunity to meet him before he passed away at the 50th anniversary of Roswell.
Yeah.
And I had an opportunity to talk to him a little bit. And I said, hey, you are well-respected man. You were in the Eisenhower administration. You had a high-level job there. Why would you come out with a book and say something like this that, people might, look at you differently, And he says, no, it's necessary because our grandchildren need to know that this is real, this has happened, and the story needs to be out there. So after he told me that, I said, that's it. I'm a believer. I'm a total believer.
Yeah, I would have loved it. I would have loved to interview him. I've heard past interviews with him on like Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM, and he was such. I mean, he was a no kidding guy. I mean, he was a straight shooter, and everything he told lined up precisely. Mm-hmm. And see, that's just hard for some people to wrap their head around. But individuals like him and in his position, especially as you're getting older, you're getting close to the end. It's like, why do you even care anymore? And a lot of these people just start talking about it.
I think that's why. Yeah, that's why he came out with that book. He said it was time for him to tell the story and tell the truth.
Yeah,
and get it out there. So, now.
Yeah. Now, here's one thing that always fascinates me, and I never know what this is. I've tried to do some research, but not as in-depth as I can, and I think the audience would be fascinated in this. And the topic is implants. What are alien implants specifically? Because you hear a lot about it.
I'm glad you asked the question. Dr. Roger Lear, who's, since passed away, was a good guy, and I knew him well. And, he did a lot of research on these things, quite a bit of scientific research. And he had 17 patients that they extracted these implants from. So let me just read you a little bit about what the peculiarities of these implants are. Number one, no inflammatory rejection reaction by the body to these foreign objects, which is usually the first thing that happens. You get a splinter in your finger, and the next thing, it starts to turn red and it starts to swell up, and it's painful.
Yeah.
Right? But no visible portal of entry. So you don't see a scar where this thing went into the person's body. Collection of specialized nerve endings surrounding the object. An outer coating of ceramic biological material. A metallic phase where inorganic metal becomes biological tissue. The emission of radio waves, which are deep space frequencies in the FM band. Electromagnetic fields in excess of 10 milligauss. Composition of meteoric iron 66. Rare earth metals such as U-236, a single isotope of uranium existing by itself, as well as elements such as uridium, which is very rare and hard to find in the Earth's crust.
Yeah.
Non-terrestrial isotopic ratios indicating the involved elements did not come from Earth. And it goes on. I mean, gold spheres which have unknown function, metallic caverns that are no larger than the diameter of one atom, resistance to ordinary cutting techniques such as metallic sawing or severing with a cutting instrument. One of the specimens had to be cut with a laser.
Wow.
I mean, it goes on. And I mean, so these are things that have been taken from people. And I don't know if you know Terry Lovelace. Excuse me. He had X-rays of his implants, and they were to be extracted by a doctor. And so they went in there and they did another X-ray, before the surgery, and they were gone. They were removed.
Wow.
And it's a fascinating story. It's the name of the book that he wrote is Incident at Devil's Den. When he was in a service with another gentleman, another man, he was in the Air Force as well, and they were camping in this place called Devil's Den, Arkansas, and they had this incredible experience where they were abducted by this huge craft and multiple people that were on there, and so it's a fascinating story, and one that again proves that these implants are real. What are they? Are they tracking devices, which is very possible? Are they monitoring the body? I've heard that mentioned before, that they monitor bodily functions and toxic issues within the body, things of that nature. So it's again something that is evidence. I mean, there is evidence. All these debunkers talk, well, show me the evidence. Well, hey, here's a bunch of evidence right here. These implants, they're weird. They're very weird. They're strange. I mean, if they're transmitting in deep space frequencies, who's monitoring it?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. And I just like, what is the, I just can't wrap my head around how it works, because if it's such a little implant, let's take, for example, right now, the newest iPhone, which is out, which is the iPhone 14, has a satellite feature built in for emergencies. And it just sends, if you're in a no signal area, you can just connect to the, point to the sky, satellite, and it just sends like a little text to get help.
Right. Yeah.
See, that's how I'm wondering how these chips work. It's like the power within one of these chips to shoot out a signal, but a signal to where, and that's what always curious me. It's like, where's the signal going?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's possible that it's not deep space. It could be very, very earthly in nature, especially if it involves the military. I think also that the military probably has a vested interest in monitoring these types of people, because I think they want to know as much about this phenomena as we do.
Yeah.
And so if they can monitor where this person is, and they're having an experience, then they want to know, and then they want to be there when it's happening. So, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities in all of this, for sure.
Well, you know what? That is that's actually a good point. And other point I want to bring up is, this might be out of your realm, but I just want your take on this, because this has always been intriguing. I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of these videos that have been declassified by the Department of Defense, especially these Tic Tac UFOs that were above the water and going under the water. Do you think, because I know, just like outer space, we know more about the universe than we do what's under our oceans. And I've always wondered if there are any alien bases or anything under the ocean. I mean, do you have any input on that? Because I always wondered, like, are they chilling out under the sea?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of things like down by Catalina, that canyon down there that seems to be very active in a lot of respects. There's like a magnetic anomalies there that are occurring. There's a lot of sightings. One year I got a hint from a woman that was on a boat with a friend, a nice cabin cruiser of some sort, and the next thing she knows, the Coast Guard is picking them up, and both her and her friend are totally naked. They have no idea what happened. except that there was this bright light that came over the boat, and that was the last thing they remember. And so,
Wow.
you know, so whether or not there's something going on in that particular area, it seems to be a hot spot. There's been some Google Maps one year came out with this. Somebody noticed that there was this large area that looked like it was not natural, and it looked like it could be some kind of a facility under the water, quite far down.
Yeah.
But it's possible. It's absolutely possible because, as you say, there's so many parts of the ocean that are so deep that it's very difficult for us to really investigate these places in any significant way. So it's totally possible that there might be something down there, because there's been so many sightings by various military ships and also civilian type craft that see these objects entering the water, coming out of the water. So why are they doing that? There must be some reason for them to do that other than drinking water, which is a whole other theory that these things need to have water in their systems. But that's another story.
Yeah. So if individuals need help, how specifically can OPUS help them, your organization?
Yeah. Well, first of all, people need to understand that we've been around since 1994. We have basically three ways that we can help people. One is to, if they would like to be put into the online support group, which is totally confidential. The only way you get into it is if you contact us, and you fill out a form on our site. It's a support button on the site that you can click, and then you'll fill out a little form. It's not a long thing at all, and then we can put you into the group. And then the second thing is that you're looking for other types of assistance, whether it's mental health type of assistance, hypnotherapy or psychotherapy, things of that nature. We have a referral network that we have of vetted providers that we can give you. And then the third thing is our EST group, which is the Experiencer Support Team, that is available to talk with the person. And they're very experienced in a lot of these phenomena. And, then they'll find out exactly what it is that you're looking for. And in a lot of cases, it's just somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And that's very important, that they know that there's somebody that's going to listen to them and not be judgmental in any way, shape, or form, but just listen and then understand what it is that they are looking for or that they need. And so people can go to our website at OPUS Network. That's all one word, opusnetwork.org, and you'll find that information. And then we've also have articles and documents in there that you can read on various topics, like I mentioned, the omega-3 studies there. And we're in the process of doing the omega-4 study, where we actually went out to a lot of our providers and had them do a questionnaire. And we have that information. It's called the phase 1 of the omega-4 study. Had some very interesting things where people or the providers have talked about the fact that what they run into mostly are the grays that people talk about. And then they talk about orbs as the second most seemingly popular thing that people talk about. And then interdimensionals. And then the fourth thing is poltergeist activity. And of course, I've always believed that all of this, everything and anything in the paranormal world is connected in some way, shape, or form. And it's just that we don't fully understand it yet. If we understand it at all,
yeah,
in many cases.
Well, you know what? It's great to have the organization such as yours, because people do need an outlet and a place to go get resources, and to start to understand what happened to them, even those that are still tucked away in a corner and without talking about their experience yet. And I really believe that your organization is a huge help when it comes to these things. Just a reach out, gather information.
We hope so. We hope so that we're doing what we can to help these people, and it's something that came about years and years ago now. It's going on almost 30 years.
Yeah.
That we've been doing this, and we realized the fact that there was a need for a place, a place of neutrality where people could come and talk about their experiences and talk to other people that are having these kinds of experiences, because they're very real. Something is going on. Do we fully understand it? No, we don't. And as I mentioned before, is it extraterrestrial? Is it interdimensional? Is it time travelers? Is it military? Or is it all the above, which I firmly believe, and probably anything else you can possibly think of?
Well, you know what? My take on that is, just like you mentioned earlier, all of the above. I think it's a mix of everything. It's not just one specific item. The question is trying to narrow it down to, like for each individual, what specific piece does that fall into? But I do think it is all of the above, whether it's aliens, time travel, government involvement. I think, nothing can be ruled out when it comes to this phenomenon, and specifically alien abductions and alien contact. I mean, there's so much that we don't know that we're trying to get. And I do believe, and I just want to mention this, Lester, our generation nowadays, especially the younger generations, they're big into taking videos and they speak their mind, as you're well aware. And I do think that a lot of this, let's say information release, etc., a lot of it will be exposed by the younger generation, because with all the phones out there nowadays, people, or the younger generation, they speak up. And I think a lot of this will be not exposed, but a lot of evidence will be coming out from individuals. Now, some of this stuff, of course, can be CGI'd, because I know how to do that, but there's so much proof out there that you don't even need video. Just look at the information and look at what all these people coming forward are saying, and they're all lining up. I mean, everything lines up. And it's just a darn fascinating topic, Lester. And
it is.
And I admire you.
No question about it.
And I admire you and your colleagues and your whole team. Taking a step into actually researching this and letting people come to you all. I mean, people need an outlet, and you and I can agree on that. People need an outlet,
absolutely.
And if they have somebody to talk to, they'll feel, they'll feel not crazy anymore, because there's others that went through similar experiences.
There's so many people, as you say, and I mean, these are people of all walks of life. I mean, you have lawyers, you have policemen, you have firemen, you got blue collar workers, you've got white collar workers, everybody is affected by this, and a lot of them are not able to come forward and tell their story simply because of where they are, what's going on with their lives, and unfortunately, in some cases, it's very detrimental to their health, very detrimental to their family situation, to their own personal situation, and that's tragic that they're not able to, find an outlet, and so it's for me, being able to be on a show like yours is very, very helpful in getting the word out that we exist and that we're here to help people. So thank you again, Elijah, for what you do, and the many other podcasters out there that are doing very similar things that are very important. And I think it's going to be this kind of groundswell movement that's going to really push it over the finish line, so to speak. The interview that I did, I mentioned with John Ramirez, ex-CIA gentleman. He also mentioned in our conversation that something very significant is going to occur in approximately 2 months, and I've heard many stories along these lines where something was going to happen, and on such and such a date, but it never usually occurred. But I have a feeling in this particular case that he's been read into something and has probably a pretty good connection on what that particular thing is. He couldn't say what it was.
Yeah.
But he said that something is going to occur. So that's a kind of a June time frame as to something significant happening that will make it very difficult for anyone to disavow the fact that, hey, we're not alone.
Yeah. So it's so pretty much everybody be on the lookout for anything.
Yeah.
Give or take that time frame,
Right.
Like add a little gap before and after that time frame. But yeah, I mean, I do what, and I'm not denying it, because out of everything we've seen, so much stuff. It's like I remember waking up one morning and seeing the news article, Pentagon confirms. I'm like, what? So see, even the Pentagon is slowly releasing a lot of this information, and it's I mean, I believe it. It's coming to fruition. It really is.
It is. It'll hopefully be within my lifetime, because I'm sure I'm a lot older than you are, and
well, I just turned 40.
In
I just turned 40 in March. I'm an old man.
Okay. Yeah, I'm about 35 years older than you are. So.
You're a young guy, Lester. You're young, man.
But so hopefully we'll definitely see that day come about.
I really hope so, and I really hope that I wish the government would just they don't have to say or reveal anything. I just wish they would come out and say and show us something, don't show us an aircraft or a spacecraft. Just say here's a hinge, from a door, or here's a screw, something.
You mean the ashtray from the craft?
Yeah, exactly. Or here's the toilet. Here's a kind of cigarettes or plant that they smoke. Just show us something. Because at least if you show us a hinge or an ashtray, you're not giving away technology. You're just giving us something. And I do think that is slowly coming out. I really do.
Yeah, I believe so.
Because because you remember when the government always denied Area 51 Groom Lake, and then they finally said, okay, yeah, it's real. It exists. And then the Pentagon starts declassifying all these videos without going into much. So we don't know what it is. But then you got these retired fighter pilots that are now speaking out about it. It's just, it's coming, Lester. It's coming.
Oh, yeah.
And I cannot wait. And I think it's going to be sooner than later. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. I definitely, especially after that interview I did with John Ramirez, it seems like it is imminent, for sure.
Oh, it is imminent. So, Lester, are there any final things you would like to tell our audience, or any information you would like to give?
Yeah. Of course, again, please, if you have your own experience and you're looking for help, or if you have a friend that has had an experience and looking for help, please send them to our website, which is opusnetwork.org. And also, if you want an interesting read, I came out with a book 2 years ago called The Unknown Other and the Existential Proposition of Alien Contact, which talks about so many facets of the phenomena and some of the scientific information. Also, the omega-3 study is in there, and also the full report that the government came out with, what was it now, almost 2 years ago, with their first release of information on the UAP phenomena is in the book, as well as information on the Nimitz situation with those aircraft coming in contact with the Tic Tacs. So it's on Amazon. If you're a Kindle Prime person, it's free. If it's Kindle, I think it's $9.99, and then the paperback is $20. And all the proceeds of the sales of that book go directly to OPUS. I don't take anything for it. That's my contribution to the cause, and I want to keep this ability to help people going. And so, as I said, we're a nonprofit, and so if you feel that in your heart to donate, there's a donate button on there, and it's tax deductible. So I think that covers most of it.
Well, fantastic. And we will definitely be sharing all this information, including all your links, the books, and everything down in the description. So all of our listeners can go and check it out. Because I personally, I am going to check it out.
I appreciate it very much.
So yeah, our listeners can have a way to get info. But Lester, it's been an honor and a pleasure speaking with you.
For me as well.
And if I can keep you on the line for a moment,
sure.
I'll be right back with you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Lester Velez. What an interesting discussion. Everything from aliens to abductions to you name it. Just so fascinating. If you want to check out all of his stuff, go to opusnetwork.org. That is opusnetwork.org. And we will also have the links down in the description to his books, to the website, and all of his information. But for now, I am Mr. Cyber. This is Mysterious Realms, and until next time, be cool.